China keeps its benchmark lending rates unchanged. The European Central Bank warns about a potential bubble in AI-linked stocks. And Bitcoin surges to an all-time high of $94,000. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Economic Bulletin here on Qnews, where we present comprehensive coverage and expert insights on the latest economic trends and developments. And we start off with Europe, where a key measure of Eurozone wages surged by the largest amount since the euro was introduced, complicating the European Central Bank's plans for interest rate cuts as inflation slows. Eurozone negotiated wage growth accelerated to 5.42% in the third quarter, up from 3.54% recorded in the second quarter, and driven by workers seeking compensation for inflation. The data comes less than 4 weeks before the ECB's final policy meeting of the year, where officials are expected to cut the deposit rate for the fourth time. According to new official data, inflation in the United Kingdom surged to a 6-month high in October, exceeding the target set by the Bank of England. The Office for National Statistics, the ONS, reported that higher domestic energy bills pushed consumer price inflation up to 2.3% in October, compared to a 3-year low of 1.7% in the previous month. Persistent inflation in the services sector, which makes up around 80% of the British economy, also contributed to the increase. This unexpected rise in inflation pushed the rate above the Bank of England's target of 2%. Also, figures from the ONS showed that British house prices rose at the fastest pace since February 2023, in the 12 months preceding September. The average house price in the UK in September was 2.9% higher than a year earlier, at $370,000, accelerating from 2.7% annual increase in August. Private sector rents in October were 8.7% higher than a year earlier, the biggest annual increase since May. In Asia, China maintained its benchmark lending rates unchanged as Beijing assesses the effects of existing stimulus measures. The People's Bank of China kept the 1-year loan prime rate, a key reference for corporate loans, remains at 3.1%. Similarly, the 5-year LPR, commonly used as a benchmark for mortgage rates, was held steady at 3.6%. The decision to keep rates unchanged follows last month's unexpected rate cuts, which were intended to boost economic momentum amid signs of slowing growth. Staying in Asia, and according to government data, Japan's exports rose 3.1% in October, driven by strong demand for chip-making equipment in China. This marks a recovery from September's 1.7% decline and surpasses forecasts of a 2.2% increase. However, exports to the United States fell 6.2% due to weak auto shipments, raising concerns over potential trade disruptions from tariffs promised by US President-elect Donald Trump. Imports edged up 0.4%, resulting in a larger than expected trade deficit of 461.2 billion yen. Businesses remain cautious amid fears of future protectionist policies. Data showed that South Africa's inflation rate dropped sharply in October to its lowest level since the peak of the COVID pandemic. Statistics South Africa data showed that annual inflation dropped to 2.8% from 3.8% in September. It attributed falling fuel prices as the primary driver of the slowdown, with slowing food inflation as another important factor. South Africa's central bank will announce its next interest rate decision on Thursday. Moving to the tech world now, and the European Central Bank has warned about the potential for a bubble in stocks linked to artificial intelligence, which could collapse abruptly if investor expectations are not met. This caution was part of the ECB's biannual financial stability review, which highlighted various risks, including ongoing conflicts, tariffs, and vulnerabilities within the banking system. The ECB emphasized that the stock market, particularly in the United States, has become overly reliant on a small group of companies believed to be the main beneficiaries of the AI boom.
The European Central Bank, ECB, is raising alarms over global financial vulnerabilities, spotlighting risks from escalating trade tariffs and a possible bubble in artificial intelligence, AI stocks. Both factors, it warns, could undermine economic stability. In its latest financial stability review, the ECB underscores concerns about U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff proposals. If enacted, these measures could disrupt international trade and heighten economic uncertainty, particularly in the euro area. With financial markets already appearing fragile, these developments add to the strain. Another looming threat centers on the tech sector, where market valuations have become increasingly dependent on a few AI-driven firms. The ECB warns that overconcentration in these companies could lead to significant disruptions if their performance falls short of expectations, potentially triggering a broader market fallout. Amid rising inflation and slowing global growth, the ECB notes that liquidity mismatches in investment funds and rising borrowing costs in Eurozone countries like Italy and France exacerbate these risks. Policymakers and investors are being urged to prepare for potential shocks as economic challenges continue to mount. The global financial landscape, it seems, is urging toward a precarious balance.
Now, to talk more about the ECB's review, joining us from Amman is the financial expert, Dr. Ahmed Al-Naim. Thank you very much for being with us. Welcome to our Economic Bulletin. So what are your most significant takeaways from the ECB's financial stability review?
Thank you so much for hosting me. In fact, today we have found how the European Central Bank issued a number of decisions regarding fiscal stability. You know, quite generally, we know that fiscal markets have been going through a lot of geopolitical issues. And in fact, There was a lot of concentration in the outputs of the ECB today about the possible or potential fiscal risks. In fact, the report incorporated some major points regarding the Eurozone. They discussed or shed light on the fiscal weakness points witnessed by the Eurozone, specifically regarding the movement of global trade because of the tumultuous geopolitical situations happening and unfolding right now in the world. The general report as well incorporated some other points, including the tumultuous fluctuations that happened recently in the fiscal market, and they as well spoke about some sovereign loans or sovereign debts that are afflicting a lot of countries, in fact, and the report as well shed light on some credit risks relating to some states, and as well the report spoke about electronic commerce and how it negatively affected real estate market. And as well, the report issued a number of recommendations specifically as that relates to the Eurozone.
And what do you think the ECB's assessment is of the impact of US President-elect Donald Trump and his proposed tariff policies? What do you think their assessment of that is?
In fact, the winning of Donald Trump is going to definitely impact the European economy as a whole, specifically as that relates to his proposed tariffs on some American imports, which is going to negatively impact European exports, and specifically relative to the chemical industries and the automobile industry as well. And we to 260 million euros, in fact, and as well the customs fees that are soaring or that will be soaring when President-elect Trump comes to office are as well going to hinder European economies, and as well this is going to directly impact the exports of the European Union. You know, the European Union in the year 2023 exported with a total amount of 500 and 200 million euros. And these measures in general are going to hinder the exports of Germany and the Netherlands and other European countries' exports as well. And definitely these decisions are going to as well affect some fiscal policies in the Eurozone. In fact, the growth rates are going to decrease and plummet, which definitely is going to negatively impact the national economies of these European countries. Quite generally, the concerns of Europe regarding the American proposed tariffs and their impact on the European economy all revolve around growth rates, because, you know, the growth of European economies right now is something quite nebulous, specifically because of the geopolitical tensions that are happening. As well, European states are perceiving that they might go through a lot of trade issues and maybe replicate the trade war that happened with China in the past, or something similar to that could happen. And in the case of the ECB's response, directly, since it's the legislative authority in this region. In fact, there is geo-economic division in these among Central European banks, and they're going to operationalize some measures in order to increase interest rates. And as we all know, the ECB decreased the interest rates 3 consecutive times before, and right now it is targeting the inflation of 2%, and that's why it's operationalizing these policies.
I'm just going to cut in for a second, because I do want to ask you about the AI bubble, if I can. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but what are the potential global implications if an AI-related asset bubble bursts?
In the most recent report issued by the ECB, this report warned of a potential burst of AI asset and bubble. And in fact, this report has a number of pivotal points regarding that specific subject. In fact, some data are proving that the market value is being focused in some specific companies like Microsoft, for instance, and this is going to hinder the market in general, and as well a decrease in the revenues of these companies are going to as well hinder a lot of asset prices in a number of geographical zones, because as we talked about earlier, there is a lot of fluctuations happening in the prices in the United States, which is going to trickle down into other global economies. And as well, there are a lot of investment risks specifically in the sector of technology, and this is going to shock a number of non-financial institutions, which is going to increase the rates of market fluctuations, and is going to negatively impact the share prices in a lot of corporations.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we're just out of time, but thank you, Dr. Naim, for coming on and giving us your wisdom. That's our financial expert from Oman. Now, Bitcoin soared to a record $94,000 after reports that Donald Trump's media company is in talks to acquire crypto trading platform Bulletin. The move has sparked hopes for a pro-crypto stance under the incoming Trump administration. The cryptocurrency, which has doubled in value this year, was last trading at $92,104 during Asian hours. The deal, reportedly an all-stock acquisition, would link Trump's media's Truth Social platform with Bulletin, with support from the owner of the NYSE. Apple has proposed a $100 million investment to build a plant in Indonesia to manufacture accessories and components, following a ban on the iPhone 16 due to non-compliance with local rules requiring smartphones to have 40% locally made parts. The Trade Ministry is set to discuss the proposal for a plant in West Java. While Apple has no manufacturing facilities in Indonesia, it has operated developer academies there since 2018, with investment totaling $99 million.
It gives me great pleasure to declare open the 29th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
COP29 must tear down the walls of climate finance.
Now, COP29 is currently underway in Azerbaijan, and during a session today where negotiators shared their progress, Australian Climate Minister Chris Bowen said he had heard a variety of different amounts for how much cash is needed for climate finance. Developing countries say they need $1.3 trillion a year, but other nations have proposed figures from $440 billion to $900 billion. Bowen and Egypt's Environment Minister, Yasmin Foued, are co-leading negotiations on the climate finance goal.
Mr. Fouad and I heard from developing countries a requirement of US $1.3 trillion of finance mobilised. But we heard different proposals for the split between the provided element and the element which would be mobilised from that provision quantum. For example, we've heard three different proposals for the provided quantum of $900 billion, $600 billion and $440 billion. Others have mentioned a floor of US $100 billion with linkages to the contributor-based resolution, as well as sources and structure.
Meanwhile, OPEC Secretary General Haitham Al-Ghaiz told the COP29 summit in Baku on November the 20th that crude oil and natural gas should be seen as valuable resources, emphasizing that discussions on global warming should focus on reducing emissions rather than excluding specific energy sources. He echoed Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev's comments, who also referred to oil and gas as a gift from God in his opening address. Al-Ghaiz argued that the climate goals set in the 2015 Paris Agreement aim to cut emissions, not dictate energy choices, and stressed that technologies like carbon capture can help mitigate the environmental impact of fossil fuels. The Indonesian President, Prabowo Subianto, has assured that his country is confident it can achieve net zero emissions by 2040, a decade earlier than its previous target. He also announced plans to retire all coal and fossil fuel power plants within the next 15 years, advancing the original deadline of 2056. In addition, Indonesia aims to build 75 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity over the same period. Prabowo highlighted the country's abundance of sunlight, which makes solar energy a key resource for its renewable energy transition. Despite being one of the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters and a leading thermal coal exporter, Indonesia is home to the third largest rainforest, which aids its commitment to sustainability. According to the Kuwait Central Statistical Bank Bureau, Kuwait's consumer price index grew by 2.44% last October on an annual basis. The Bureau said that on a monthly basis, the inflation rate rose 0.13% compared to last September. The increase in annual inflation was primarily driven by higher prices in key sectors, particularly food, clothing and education, but excluding transportation. Moody's forecasts that Saudi Arabia's economy will grow by 1.7% in 2024, followed by a stronger 4.7% growth in 2025 and 2026, driven by government-backed diversification projects. This projection exceeds previous estimates, including the Saudi government's own forecast of just 0.8% GDP growth for 2024 and the 4.6% growth predicted in the kingdom's pre-budget statement for 2025. The 2025 growth outlook aligns with Saudi Arabia's planned $343 billion expenditure, reflecting its commitment to Vision 2030 goals, which includes investment in technology, tourism, renewable energy and infrastructure. Moody's noted that government-led diversification efforts in hydrocarbon, exporting nations like Saudi Arabia, will fuel significant growth in the coming years. Iraq's fuel oil exports are set to reach record highs in 2024, surpassing 18 million metric tons, driven by increased shipments in October. This surge comes as domestic demand eases and production rises, supporting Iraq's oil revenues despite stagnant crude exports due to OPEC production caps. The boost in fuel oil exports, primarily high sulfur and straight run types, will help ease elevated prices in Asia and lower refinery feedstock costs. October alone saw a record 2.15 million metric tons exported, with major destinations including Singapore and India. And that's all in our economic bulletin for now, but just time to give you a roundup of today's key headlines. China keeps its benchmark lending rates unchanged. The European Central Bank warns about a potential bubble in AI-linked stocks. And Bitcoin surges to an all-time high of $94,000. And that's all for now. Stay connected for more news and updates on our social media platforms. And thank you for watching Q News.